In the late 50s or early 60s, when I dared to consider becoming a filmmaker or whatever, I was living in France and didn't have the feeling there was any role model in my own country, in Germany, until I discovered this movie, Die Brücke, The Bridge, by Bernhard, Wicki. At first, I think I didn't really want to see it because there had been a number of war movies in the 50s in Germany. That's what the audience was interested in, the male audience, you know, whether it was Stalingrad, whether it was the end of the war, but it was always about what they had done. And it was always films where somehow they tried to show the good German, the good soldier, the good Wehrmacht. And we sensed that, the young generation. We didn't want to see these movies, you know, that was part of that generation who'd made the war. And then came Bernhard Wicki's Die Brücke, which from the outside looked like those other war movies, but the spirit was totally different. You saw all of a sudden a generation lost. And for the first time, myself, I started to understand our older brothers, not our parents, the young people who had just been 7 or 8 years older than us and had partaken in these last years of the war. These young people, they grew up under the Nazis. They grew up in the war. They did not know anything else. So they wanted to save basically what was theirs. They were fighting in a fiercer way than the grown-ups. Our fathers failed, the grown-ups failed. Germany's going to go under. You are the ones to save it. Now you tell that to a 15, 16-year-old boy and give him a gun, of course he'll go fighting. And in the fight, all of a sudden, he starts to realize that death is not an abstract notion, but becomes a reality. And I think that that's really what The Bridge is about, and why it is, to this day, so important. In the whole 50 or more years of filmmaking since World War II in German cinema, this film is simply unique. What was great in Bernhard Wicki's film was that he had cast the people of that age, and not, as you often do, you take actors who look younger than they are, but are already experienced. So I don't dare to call it innocence, but the candid aspect of these faces, of their physicality, was really part of the movie. And somehow, of course, when I made then, 6 years later, started working on Young Turles, and I met all the actors of The Bridge to see whether they could be part in Young Turles. But the 6, 7 years that had passed were too much. From age 15 to age 22, you change more than maybe ever in your life again. It's only been in recent years that I saw the footage of American cameramen shooting when they came into Germany in these last weeks in April of 1945. And there is especially a place, Gemünden, where you see almost the exact same bridge, the same trees decapitated, the houses, the ruins, and these faces of now prisoners being made of these children soldiers. And it felt to me as if Bernhard Wicki's film was like a continuation of that newsreel, even though it's shot 14 years later. But his art, and I would say more than art, his obsession and his perseverance and determination to recreate exactly as it had been. But the 14 years from 1945 to 59 when he made the film, that was a huge time span. And I don't know how he did it, especially with the technicians he had in Germany who worked at studio work, very melodramatic in the sense of Douglas Sirk, but not this harsh realism Wicki used. Well, Bernhard Wicki, whom I knew later when he was kind of an imposing figure, not unlike the older Orson Welles you could see at the Ritz in Paris, used also to a certain elegance and style in living. Well, Bernhard Wicki was an actor, and so he came in '59 pretty late to make his first movie. He may have been 40 already. And people would not accept this, you know, oh, an actor now, he's making a movie. So he was, on the one hand, it gave a good conscience to everybody to have this film, but on the other hand, by the film industry, he was not accepted. So when he made his second movie, Das Wunder des Malachias, he thought, now having done The Bridge about World War II, I want to speak about the Wirtschaftswunder, the so-called, you know, economic miracle, which was far from a miracle. It was mostly financed by the American Marshall Fund. Well, this film was a scandal. First of all, he went way over budget, but everything that was not being said in the 50s about this self-satisfied society, you know, full in all senses of the word, full of themselves and full of food, he spelled it out. So somehow the Bridge did not have a follow-up. Each new film for him had to be a new adventure. There were always 5-6 years in between. He had been for Morituri even to Hollywood briefly. That didn't really work out either. And he never compromised in his filmmaking. The Spinnennetz and the later films were just as radical as the first ones. Somehow for us, the young filmmakers who started in the mid-60s to make our movies, he became like a godfather. He also had the physical aspect of a godfather, but there was never like a direct cooperation. It was sort of a spiritual godfather. We were too scared of those who had been before us. You know, the war crime was Father's cinema is dead or Opa's Kino is tot. And instead of doing like the French, who after Godard and Chabrol's first films, they joined forces with those who had been before them, with Jean-Pierre Melville. Well, we at the time, I don't know whether we were scared of the older generation or whether we, because indeed we wanted to kill them, or whether we were too proud to work with them. But only Rainer Werner Fassbinder always worked with them, and Wim Wenders had him once in a cameo. But the generation before him, Kluge, myself, Peter Fleischmann, Werner Herzog, we stayed away from those guys. Even Bernhard Wicki, who did not at all spiritually belong to that generation, nevertheless, few of us dared to pay homage. We all liked him very much. We came to pay him visits, but we didn't work with him.